The sky cracked open like a wound, bleeding gray light over the broken plain, where starships once landed, and now only scavengers and silence remained. And in the middle of that desolate market square, filled with broken crates and torn fabrics, she lay face down in the cold, thick mud, arms curled inward like she was trying to hold the last of her warmth inside her body that did not look human and yet was no less frail than a dying child left out in the storm. And people walked past her, all of them with heads bowed under weatherproof hoods, all of them with hardened boots that splashed mud onto her back, none of them looking long enough to register her ribs showing or the blue bruises swelling beneath her skin that shimmered faintly with bioluminescence. And still, she did not speak or cry or beg for help. She only lay there motionless, as if her body had forgotten how to hope. And from the rooftops, the security drones hovered silent, recording the scene for archives that no one would ever review. And far above that, the sky kept weeping as if it too was ashamed. Dane was just another soldier without a war, wearing civvy gear that smelled faintly of field rations and solder burn. His boots were secondhand, and his hands still bore the calluses of a trigger finger that would never forget where it belonged. And he had seen too much and cared too little, and when he first saw her lying in the muck, his first thought was not of mercy, but of avoidance. Because people who cared got broken, and people who stopped got punished. And this world did not reward kindness, it buried it, and called it weakness. But something about the way her hand had curled like a wilted flower, something about how her shoulders barely rose with breath, something about how her kind had once been proud. And now, she was here, with blood drying between her shoulder blades. Stopped him, and he hated himself for it, hated that he crouched in the filth and spoke gently, like someone might to a wounded dog. "Hey, you alive?" he said, and her eyes flicked open, not fully, not all the way, but enough for him to see a flicker of green behind the mud and pain. And before he knew what he was doing, he was lifting her slowly, gently, like a sandstorm might cradle the last remaining seed. And for the first time in a long time, he felt something break open inside him, and it hurt. He took her to the shed behind the ration hall because he had nowhere else to go, and the bunkhouse would have reported her the second she crossed the threshold. And there were laws about alien vagrants and penalties about sheltering them. And though the war was over, the prejudice was not. And she knew it too, because the moment he laid her down and pulled a blanket over her thin frame, she recoiled, not in fear, but in exhausted certainty. That kindness always came with cost, and her mouth opened, but no sound came, just a soft wheeze, and her hands twitched like she wanted to thank him and apologize all at once. And he said nothing, only poured clean water from his canteen and wiped the mud gently from her cheek, revealing skin that shimmered faintly with gold veins like lightning trapped beneath skin. And it was beautiful and strange, and made him ache in ways he could not name. And when she slept, he watched the rise and fall of her breath, wondering what worlds she had seen, what dreams she had lost, and why it mattered to him now, after so long of pretending nothing did. It was 3 nights before she spoke, and when she did, it was with a voice like silk wrapped in thorns, soft and trembling, and filled with things too large for words. She said they took everything, and her eyes filled with stars he could not name. And she said she had not meant to run, had not meant to survive when the others fell. And she said something strange then, something like, "I carry them inside." And for a moment he thought she meant trauma or ghosts, but when he looked closer, he saw faint pulses beneath her ribs, not hers, but something sleeping inside, something coiled and breathing and older than war. And it terrified him, and yet he stayed. And she watched him with eyes that no longer held just fear, but also confusion, because she had expected abandonment and been given warmth. She had expected indifference and been met with quiet presence. And somewhere between those nights and that warmth, something changed inside her. And when he passed her food, she reached for his hand just once, and though she let go quickly, it was enough to make the air feel different, like trust was taking root in a place where only rot had lived. The patrol came, silent and cruel in their regulation armor, faces hidden behind mirrored plates, boots that sank only slightly into the mud. As they marched in formation past the shattered gate and into the ration yard, and when they asked questions, they did not ask with words, but with weapons drawn and scans set to detect biosigns not human. And Dane felt his gut twist, because he had known this would come, and he had no good answers and no lies good enough to protect her. And when she stepped forward without prompting, without fear, and stood before them with her chin raised, and her frame still weak, but no longer breaking, he realized she was protecting him. And the patrol scanned her and muttered something about unauthorized presence and vermin and level 2 clearance. And when they reached for her, he moved first, without plan, or logic or reason. He stepped between her and their rifles and said loud and calm, "She is under my care," and the world tilted because the silence that followed was heavy with consequence. But she looked at him like he had done something unimaginable, and perhaps he had. They left eventually because war makes people lazy and reports are easier to write when trouble disappears quietly. And after the patrol was gone, and the wind picked up again, and the shadows returned to their usual corners, she turned to him and said the name of a flower from her world, one that grew in ash and never wilted. And she said it was his now, and he said nothing, just nodded and felt it land in his chest like a promise. And she stayed, not because she had to, but because something had begun, something soft and slow and strong as roots breaking through concrete. And when he made a second cot beside his own, she smiled, and when she cleaned the cuts on his hand and sang under her breath, he knew the war had not taken everything. Because in a world where no one helped the woman in the mud, someone had, and it had changed them both forever.